Hi everybody. I want to go through some tips for installation now. Let's talk gutters. When fastening the gutters, you want to make sure that the surface that you're fastening to is stable. We mentioned this in the medium to large scale rainwater harvesting class. There's a review in this online course, so you can check that out I think it's going to be either the first or second section. You want to make sure that you're not fastening to something that may look stable from the outside, but when you put the screw in, it just spins. So make sure you do that. Make sure you check it. You can take a screwdriver, a knife, and kind of dig in to the wood and see if that is, um, if it can take the load that you're going to put on it. If you're connecting to concrete, you want to make sure that you're drilling out with concrete masonry bits and that you're anchoring in there with concrete masonry anchors. With steel, you want to make sure that you're using steel screws, so sheet metal screws, self-tapping screws, things like that. Make sure you use the proper fastener or screw for the application. I guess I got a little bit ahead of myself there. Make sure to seal the seams properly on the gutter with either an 1/8 inch or up to a 1/4 inch bead of gutter sealant. This is something you do right before you step away. So if you're installing the gutter, you would go ahead and set up all of your brackets, and you would go ahead and run those all the way in except for like the last two that are closest to the seam. Then you would seal the seam and then you would run in those final two fasteners. So that's an easy way to do that. So now we're going to talk about fastening downspouts and conveyance pipe. And I think it's important to remember that if you're going to run conveyance pipe horizontally and you're going to strap it or fasten it to a structure, you need to make sure that you have fasteners every 4 to 5 feet. And so water is heavy, 8.3 something, 8.34 pounds per gallon. So consider that if you're making a horizontal run, that every 10 feet is essentially, if you've got a gallon every foot, is about 80 gallons. So, or 80 pounds, I'm sorry. So you want to make sure that your system can hold that. And so the way to do that is every 4 to 5 feet have a fastener. So if you have wet conveyance, make sure to run sealed conveyance pipe. So I want this to be solvent welded. That you should make sure that everything is solvent welded if it's wet conveyance. And you want to run the what I call a riser, the conveyance riser, all the way up to the bottom of the gutter. You want to run it as close as you can. Now I understand that some people have rain heads there, leaf eaters, etc. So you just want it to be right underneath that, because what that does is it increases your head height available space to where the water can back up in a strong downpour and not overflow. If you have any questions there, look at the wet conveyance calculation section. You also want to make sure you use the proper pipe strap to fasten to the structure. Don't use super thin pipe strap if you can avoid it. Mildly decorated painted steel ones can be found in the gutter section. And I say mildly decorative because they're not all that fancy, but they look better than just straight up pipe strap with holes in it. So you'll find those in your gutter section of your hardware store. And like I said, keep in mind water is heavy, so every 4 to 5 feet of a horizontal run you want to have a strap, and you want to make sure that it's secured properly. Moving on to fitting PVC. So know the difference between pipe sizes. For example, 4-inch Schedule 40 PVC and 4-inch sewer and drain are not the same size or price. In fact, I always recommend sewer and drain because it's about half the price. It's also about half the thickness, but it does work for rainwater harvesting purposes, and it is also rated for direct burial. So just know the differences, and don't go in and buy a bunch of sewer and drain pipe because it's half the price, and then buy a bunch of Schedule 40 PVC fittings because you can't find what you need in sewer and drain. So for an example here, if you go to Home Depot, Lowe's, or any of your irrigation stores, you'll find that there are a ton of options for fittings for 4-inch Schedule 40, not so many for sewer and drain. But you will find all of the fittings you need for rainwater harvesting for sewer and drain, and all of the like rain heads and first flush diverter stuff will adapt to sewer and drain as well. So keep that in mind. Make sure that both sides of the fitting are clean. Now we're going to talk about when you go to solvent weld it together. Make sure that both sides are clean. I always carry like a little cloth with me to wipe all that down. You want to use the purple primer, apply it evenly to soften the PVC on both sides. You want to apply the solvent or glue evenly on both the male and female fittings. You twist it at least 90 degrees when pushing it together, and when you push it together, make sure it bottoms out. And as soon as it bottoms out, you hold it for 10 seconds, 10 Mississippi seconds, and then release. And I always like to wait 15 minutes before applying water pressure to that. So remember, PVC is not UV resistant, so make sure to paint or cover. I guess I meant to put or cover the pipe, but I think that's pretty self-explanatory. So remember to paint or cover it, and you can use like 80 grit or 120 grit sandpaper to kind of rough it up real quick. And I like to use flat paint because if there's water left in the pipe and there's some condensation going on, water can move through flat paint a lot easier than it can move through satin or semi-gloss or high gloss paint. So just keep that tip in mind too. Make sure to use pipe insulation on all pressurized fittings, and you would go ahead and like Gorilla Tape these on, and then you can also paint over the top of that. Spray paint works well for that, and that'll keep the UV from degrading the non-UV resistant pipe insulation as well, although I do think now we have UV resistant pipe insulation, but it's terribly expensive. I've thrown this in because this one confuses a lot of people. Know the difference between MPT and MHT. So male pipe thread and male hose thread. They are not the same thing. So your hose spigot is male hose thread, and your pipes running through your house will be pipe thread. So conversely, you can have female hose thread or female pipe thread. So just know that difference, because I've done it before too, where there'll be just a MHT hanging out in an MPT section, and I don't take a good enough look at it, and then I get where I'm going, and it's just bad news. So actually, I've already gone over this solvent welding, so we're good with this section, and I'm going to end it there. But I hope that helps out, and I will see you guys in the next section. Thanks.